Mother-in-law's in town. A lot of people talk about their mother-in-law being, I don't know. It's like always a pejorative thing. But man, I love my mom-in-law. I call her mom. It's funny because I don't even think Chanda calls her. Yeah, Chanda calls her mom. But like, I think Chanda thinks it's weird that I call her mom. I know she's my mom. She's another mom. Do you call your mother-in-law mom? Or no? Oh, she's passed. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm such a nickname, like, what do you call that? Like, what is mom? What would that be called? That's like a, term of endearment or something? Yeah. I'm such a term endearment nickname type person that, like, half the time I don't remember people's names, so it's like, mom's way easier for me. But yeah, so, it's been a decent week. I got to use my creative juices yesterday at work a little bit more. What was it? Yeah, my boss is trying to liquidate. I guess he's kind of low on money, which is not a great sign, but he's trying to liquidate. He's got a bunch of like he buys. It's a repair shop, and so he will buy like these, like he'll find something on eBay that's missing a fender or something like that, and he's like, oh, this is a great price, and he'll just have it shipped there, and he'll have the guys work on it, or he'll work on it. And so he's got this nice blue Corvette that he's trying to sell for like $49,000. Like, oh man. So he wanted me to take pictures and put it online.
Podcasting without my voice this whole time. Sorry.
Just me?
Yeah. So everyone who's been watching, like the one person in was like, "Why is Ford muted?" Because Jamie forgot to.
Come on, Jamie.
Yeah, come on, Jamie. So, yeah, last week we were talking about this slideshow that's in progress. I'm calling it Mastery of Craft and Action, and the general gist is a hypothetical framework for application and evaluation in 2020. So a framework for human action, like whether it be hobbies or I really don't have any expertise in business. So I'm thinking more in terms of hobbies or physical fitness routines or creative projects, videos or music stuff that can be done through a formula, but when it is and you revisit it 10, 20 years later, you're like, it doesn't really hold up. There's something that just doesn't, it may ring true in the moment, in the cultural moment, but then you get later and you look at it and you're like, it's like watching studio films from the 40s that William, I always forget his last name. William Friedkin. He was on a podcast and he was talking about how the studio system, a lot of people will badmouth it in the early Hollywood. But he said it provided these guys the sort of safe space to really master the craft. And so that's why mastery of craft and action is put in here, because the craft part, you really do need to have some kind of evaluating framework, or you can kind of get away with a lot of self-indulgence, Mm-hmm. So he liked the studio system, Friedkin, because it gave people the opportunity to really hone in on the craft part. But most of us look back at the studio system and just see it as the same movie over and over. And this kind of, some Indians' complaints about Bollywood, for instance, or our complaints about comic book movies. They can just kind of be predictable, contrived, and and there's really no, they're going to make money either way. So there's no, once a studio system's in place, it just kind of it kind of is like almost like a subsidy. So trying to chart a course between like the studio system idea of a formula and a more improvisational thing. So you can, follow the rules like a pro to break them like an artist. But I think even that, like we're trying to get to something else in our own creative work. The thing is, as soon as you attach an economic
Motivation,
economic motivation and an economic incentive and an element, the tendency is actually, it's almost like you exchange your birthright for pottage, because you're thinking in terms of short and midterm goals, and you don't realize that the truly adaptive algorithm that's artistic, the adaptive artistic algorithm, we'll call it that.
Okay.
You don't realize that thing is actually going to be worth more money in the future, and it will be more of a rising tide raising all boats sort of scenario, as opposed to a scorched earth.
Okay, well, let's unpack the adaptive creative algorithm.
Yeah, adaptive artistic algorithm. Yeah,
AAA.
There you go. AAA. Adaptive, here, I'll put that in there. Yeah.
Because my first impression is like, yeah, it's going to be worth more, but that's because it's like lightning in a bottle. Like if you had lightning in a bottle, it'd be, you could charge whatever for it, but that's why it's called lightning in a bottle. You can't get it.
So instead of saying, I was talking about algorithm and where we get it from, the Muslim dude, he was like an algebra guy. Again, algebra is an Arabic word. So algorithm comes from a dude, alcohol rhythm or whatever. And so then my little cross-cultural pun was alcohol rhythm, the idea of alcohol and rhythm incorporated with algorithm. And so if that's too like esoteric and, pseudo-intellectual, whatever, you could say adaptive artistic algorithm. I think that's like an easier way to kind of sum it up. But the idea, we're looking for a flow state. We're not looking for a flow chart. And so that kind of thing is really, yeah, I mean, like you said, it would be lightning in a bottle, but we have examples of people who've done it. I mean, I think Steve Jobs is right on the cusp of that. I was talking with my buddy last night about how he's got the new Android and just feels like he liked it, the previous models, but this new one, there's just something that just drives him nuts about it. And he's like, it's just, I'm going to give in to the Apple hegemony. I want to go back. And it's like me too. Like I don't even like the version of the iPhone that I have, but I don't know. It just fits. It just fits. Like it's just it. And it's for me. It's the same thing with League of Legends. Like it just fits. And maybe I've been programmed. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's what Steve Jobs did. He programmed people with his user interface. But like at a certain point, you can. If it's working, like for me, the reason I stick with Apple on the mobile side and the iPad side is for the GarageBand app. It's just the most user-friendly, beginner introduction to like sketching out ideas in music that I've ever found. Like I found it more useful than like the Notation Suite softwares and digital audio workstations. I love that thing. And
I do too.
It's $5,
Well, that's why I got into the Apple ecosystem was because of iMovie.
Oh, right. Yeah. Same thing. Same idea.
I didn't have, it was free back then and it was so easy to use and powerful.
Yeah.
I tried using, for a while, I was using, what is it called? Windows
Movie Maker.
Oh
man. It's terrible. Dude.
And so when I went to iMovie, it was like, it just felt like so rich and so powerful. I was like, I'll pay $1,000 for a computer for this, And I've been talking about programs. I'm so like just now, I have to use Chrome for what we do, and it didn't remember my passwords, and I nearly flipped because like my ecosystem in Apple, everything knows me. Hi, Judah, log you in.
Yeah, and you're like, yeah, once you it doesn't take that's the thing. It's like the interface is not that hard to set up, and I just use fingerprint for everything. It's like, oh, I need to recharge my Starbucks with fingerprint. It's just so simple. We got a couple Ayushas in chat, at least a few minutes ago we did. Sorry, guys. Hey, Ayush, not that this is related to anything you're discovering, but discussing, but Delhi had elections today. Oh yeah, I did see on Instagram some folks holding up in India, like we get over here in the U.S. we get the I voted sticker. Do y'all do that in Chicago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get the I voted sticker. Well, in India they mark your finger. They put this little die, and so you show, and that way you can't vote twice because the die won't come out in like 48 hours or something. So you get your little die. And so everyone's holding their finger up and saying they voted. So, well, best of luck to Delhi. I don't know what the political situation is. And quite frankly, I don't want to discuss politics, whether it be America or India today. God help us all.
Hey.
Bhagwan Ashirvad De. That's my bad Hindi. So, and then there's another Ayush with 2 A's. He says, hey, from another Ayush. What are the chances? 5 people in chat, and there are 2 Ayushas. That's awesome, man. Well, Godspeed, sir. From the bottom of our hearts, we salute you both. And we salute the Delhi election process, and may God be with you. Mm-hmm. Pradeep says, what you do now. We started a video company recently, and so it's not unrelated to the stuff on the YouTube channel. The one YouTube property that I'm actually interested in now, the only thing really left is Based Bollywood, which is about talking about toxic masculinity in Bollywood dance scenes. And it's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek, like poking fun of the usage of that term. But a lot of the Bollywood dance scenes would be like hashtag canceled in the current day for whatever. So the next one I'm working on is Sholay, and I wanted to have it done, but we moved into our new rental this week, and it's just it's been hard to get that thing up to speed. I'm really just deflated. The place is nice, and they're really working hard to get it up to speed, but I don't do well when I have to move stuff in a vehicle. I just I'm dumb. But yeah,
I don't think that's an uncommon revulsion.
Yeah, and I've lived a pretty itinerant, nomadic life for better part of a decade, and I think it's finally it has taken its toll. So I'm pretty much feeling ready just to settle down for a long period of time. But
do you have a nice porch?
We do. It's been Florida cold, but it's cold for us. We had this weird. They were saying it was going to be tropical storm force winds up to 70 miles an hour, which is almost hurricane force.
Whoa!
It was just a winter storm came out of nowhere. They canceled school, and it barely even did anything. It's just typical school. Someone shared a meme. It was like, school today. It's going to be windy tomorrow. School's canceled Monday and Tuesday. And then they got to it, like they showed a little picture of kids with books on their heads in the hallway. There are 7 tornadoes outside.
I saw that.
It's like that's literally what happened to us this week. I mean, everyone canceled everything. We had a shoot yesterday in the wind. And I was like, man, why are we shooting? Because the wind was annoying and it was cold. Yeah. But the lady we're doing the shoot for, like, she turned out to be right. It ended up being really pretty. Like, and somehow, thank God and thank the makers of this lapel mic. Like, I didn't get, at least live, I could not hear wind noise. So we had it hidden her scarf, and sound was pretty good. I was like, wow, I did
nice.
Good call. Like, it worked out. So ended up being a pretty good shoot. And so, yeah.
Huh. Well, they're canceling schools out here because of the flu.
Oh, yeah. We got a lot of sickness going around over here too. Yeah.
They have e-learning days, though. I don't know what that means. It's not that the day's not canceled. We're just having an e-learning day.
E-learning day. Okay.
I don't know. I wondered, like, my first thought was like, oh, are they meeting on online.
Right.
Anyways, I didn't mean to.
Oh no, yeah. For the foreseeable future, we'll be here. I'll still be broadcasting here. Maybe renting office space or something. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens in the future. But for now, still, I'm using this room, and we're trying to move everything over and piecemeal to the new place. So cool. But yeah, we're talking about this idea of a flow state, trying to move from a flow chart for our creative, physical fitness, mental health endeavors, move from flow chart to flow state with this adaptive artistic algorithm or algorithm. If you're a weirdo pseudo intellectual like me. And I put those three things: proof of concept, proof of work, and proof of mood. So in the Bitcoin crypto space, they talk about proof of work. So it's basically a hacking, that this compute power to arrive at a key, to mine a key using compute power. And once you mine this key, this puzzle that's randomly generated by a computer, and the compute power hacks this puzzle, that is called proof of work. And it at least up till now quantum computing exists, so we'll have to see if proof of work will weather this hack storm. With quantum computing, it's basically the God key that can hack any system ever devised by the mind of man. That's the claim, and if that happens, whoever has it, it's the nuclear option. That there will be no such thing as privacy.
Well, what if
you're using electricity?
Can't you build a key with quantum computing though?
I don't know. I don't think that they thought ahead with the current state of cryptography and cryptocurrency. So, cryptocurrency was at the bleeding edge. For the last 15 years, they were at the bleeding edge of encryption and decryption. And that's what the whole thing is built on. That's the foundation of all of it. But when quantum computing seemed to be something far off, but Google has a quantum computer now, and I don't understand all that stuff. I don't know if it can interface with any of this, but that's kind of looming in the horizon, and no one knows. And the thing is, if someone figured it out and they got the God key, would they tell anybody?
Right.
And that's kind of a frightening thought. The other frightening thought, I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought, but it's like if they had it, why would they tell anybody? Because they can hack into your system without you even realizing it.
But if they have it and they don't tell anybody and nobody notices, then who cares?
Well, that's assuming that the actor is not malevolent, and I think.
Say he is malevolent and he doesn't do enough to really interfere in anybody's life enough to realize it, then good on him.
I don't know. Yeah, so that is the nuclear arms race of 2020, is the person who gets that God key. They could think about the kind of things they could do. They could put a black box in every RNG, in every random number generator. They could infiltrate every Federal Reserve, Treasury, and they could siphon off money at a streaming rate that nobody notices. Mm-hmm. And they could make themselves the preeminent financial superpower. And maybe that if a pirate were doing it, maybe everything would be better.
This is I don't know. Usually these things are just shifts in power, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Just because they're a bad guy, it's not like our government isn't malevolent.
Right.
Man, I can't talk today. Malevolent, right?
Right.
Malevolent. Maniacal.
Maniacal. Yeah.
Maniacal.
So yeah, so the proof of work. Anyway, that's a whole rabbit hole. But the proof of work comes from that cryptography thing. And so what I like that term, not necessarily in cryptocurrency form, but almost like proof of work. Like what if you had some sort of life management app that that's open source. It's again, it's not an app. It's just a protocol, a life management protocol. I honestly think you could cobble this together with free tools like Google Sheets and Google Forms, and time clock things, and basically you just take Jerry Seinfeld's advice that you have a calendar and you do the work every day. You try to write one joke. That's it. If you're a comedian, try to write one joke. One day you get one, and it's like all that you can do to get that one. Another day you get 20, but each day you just build up the inertia, the momentum of 60, 80, 90, 120, 365 days of X is in that box. So what I'm thinking is like taking that where you have a proof of work, and it's like just the checkbox, but it's tied in with this whole surfing violinist mentality of trying to exercise body, mind, soul, spirit, heart. So you have some sort of proof of work that holds you accountable, so you can build up momentum.
To work against the thing that we do all the time, where we imagine ourselves working on
that's the problem. And so I met this one guy. I think he's still around here. I really should catch up with this dude. But we would have some friends over back when my grandmother still had her house, and we'd have little get-togethers. And so one of the things he said was they taught him at film school or screenwriting or whatever, some screenwriting class. He said, keep it in the hot box, because the idea being that if you tell somebody your idea, that it dissipates. It has a way of like making you feel like you've done it. And so it's kind of like you're bragging about something. And so you lose your momentum to actually do the thing. So that's why I think a proof of work is actually good. Even if it's not. And the thing is, this goes back to one of my favorite metaphors for this is, basically this whole attempt here, this mess of a slideshow, we're trying to build up to my other talk I did a while back it was this tweet stream on creativity, consumption, and capital in the information age. And the idea being that we want to move from a 10 to 0 input output ratio. So instead of watching 10 hours of football and playing 0 hours of football, we move to a 1-to-1. For every hour of football we consume, we're playing an hour of football. And so that could be with anything. For every hour of movie you watch, you are putting an hour of work in. And eventually, to get to the point where it's an hour of finished product for every hour of finished product you consume. I mean, that's a very tall hill to climb. And that will not happen overnight. So you got to take this very slowly. And my tendency is without a realistic framework, flowchart, I'll take on 12 of these ideas that are way beyond my capabilities at present, and kind of why I'm just so debilitated today. Like the reality catches up with you, because you don't take into account all the little other pieces of the puzzle that have to fit into a production of a big scope. And so that's why it's better to focus on the things you can do now. Apply that Steve Martin advice to be so good they can't ignore you, but you got to do it without infringing on other people. Because as soon as you incorporate other people into whatever you're doing, you open yourself up to undermining. Either you're gonna do something that drives them nuts, and then they're like, I don't want any part of this, and I played a part in it, so you shouldn't have it up. And so they're within their rights to do that. Like it's not like like on YouTube, it's like nobody's going around signing contracts for stuff. It's just like, oh, let's just make a video. And but if that video blows up, who gets the credit?
Right.
what is the percentage? What is the percentage split? And it's kind of like when a family member dies. All of a sudden, families just. What's that noise?
Cat?
Maybe so.
Your cat was walking behind you.
Oh yeah, she's playing with some plastic. Hey, that's very obnoxious. I couldn't even see her. She's hidden under my lights.
Yours.
So what was I saying?
I don't know. You're so attuned to little noises. So you were saying, yeah, that like on YouTube, so people, when somebody
when
dies,
families die, like a family member dies, it can really cause like a huge rift in the relationship because people are like, well, I heard her say that piece of furniture was mine, and I heard her say that. And,
have you talked to Jared about his recent experience with that?
Oh no, is it public? Are you allowed to mention it or?
I don't know.
Probably not.
Probably not. But he just exactly. His family, as you know, there's all kinds of like age discrepancies, right? And like combined families. And he recently, uncle died, and that consumed his whole Christmas. It was mainly just dealing with the fallout of that.
Yeah, I mean, it happened when my grandmother died. Like, it's just, I don't know. So you assume that you assume like a quantum of common decency.
Yeah.
But what you assume that quantum of common decency is not the same as anybody else. It really is a pandemonium of assumptions. And so when everyone gets to the table and there's like, well, I thought this was mine. Like, who thought? Why did you ever think that was yours? Yeah, that was not yours. So, and this is why we've become such a litigious society. We've decided these disputes, rather than with, fists and fury and swords and nuclear options. The nuclear option has become the pen. And the printing press, the money. So,
and like most things that divorce you from actual feeling and stakes, it's just much more prevalent.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you did have to settle with fists, and well, I would like that better.
Yeah. So but it is. If you play, it's just that Anton Chigurh quote, like, if the rule that you followed brought you to this, of what use was the rule? And so I am the kind of person that's just like, what are rules? It doesn't matter, we're free. And so you go out and just be an idiot, and you think that that's not going to affect somebody else. And it is the chaos theory thing. You do one thing and it has ramifications throughout space and time that you cannot see. And it's one little tiny word spoken out of context, but it doesn't matter. I mean, for all we try to crucify the politicians, like, there are so many times where a politician is just, his whole career is ruined for something stupid that's just disproportionate to the sin. It's like Howard Dean going, "Wah!" at that time. Like, I was not a Democrat. I was not a fan of Howard Dean, but that to me was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Like, the dude's mic was too hot, and he was like, "Yeah!" And it was, it was cringy, but it's not like cancelable. Apparently, it is. Like, that ruined his whole political career. Just And so you have to guard yourself.
When you are dealing with other people, you're constantly, and it's not even making enemies. We're surrounded by adversaries. Well, people that have different interests than us, and not necessarily adversarial sense, but
right.
Just
it's what was that thing you said? It was actually in our second podcast. Interests and it's like
position versus interest or something.
Yeah,
like
interest
that?
versus positions. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think you're saying you take an interest but not a position.
you look at everybody's interests. Like, how can we get without entrenching yourself in a position?
Right, yeah. Like you quit trying to die on hills that just aren't really worth defending, you know? Yeah. And I think part of the problem is what we do is we bring into these relationships baggage. You know, it's baggage against a class of people or a race of people or a religion. And so we have that dynamic, and it just kind of is a kind of complex that we bring into this relationship, and we blame that person who is playing that role for everything that we've suffered at the hands of that idealized scapegoat. You know, we've actually we've blamed that class of people or that occupation. I mean, whatever. We blame that person for, and so two people come into the conversation with their own, you know, amount of that, and yeah, it can turn into the nuclear option. So how to dance? I mean, we've been trying to say that all along, but I'm just still not getting it. You know, I'm just still. I mean, I keep talking about this, but it's just like I feel like I'm not arriving at it in real life. And there's something about these systems that just they are counterintuitive, and you know, a lot of nature is counterintuitive. A lot of the natural world just seems to not make sense. Either it's too malevolent or it's too good, you know. Like you think about like the aphids that get milked by the ants or whatever. There's like some sort of, it's like weird as these symbiotic relationships that grow up in, you know, in the natural world. You know, the parasitic stuff almost makes more sense, but when you see these symbiotic things, you're like, oh wow, what? It's just, you know, it's like spontaneous mutualism. Mutualism is the term in the natural world, but the fact that, you know, these programmed instinctual entities are capable of that, it's just frustrating that in 2020 we can't quite, you know, get to that either.
Well, do you think that some of it is because it takes work and we're not used to that kind of work?
Right.
We're used to mitigating it with technology?
Yeah, I think, you know, going back to the work versus, like, I think there are two false versions of work, and those are performance and toil. Now, and I was trying to think, what do I want to use as my metaphor for performance? Hey, before we get in this, I'll say hey to Akshay. Thank you, Akshay, for mentioning that Delhi is missing me. We miss Delhi. We would love to be back one day. So work, don't perform, or toil. So the idea here is when Lady Gaga was doing her Super Bowl performance a few years back, she had a keytar in this one thing, and it was so ostentatious and over the top. And I was watching her, I was like, I think this seems to me like she's not playing this at all. Like I was just listening to synth, and I was like, it doesn't. She's key syncing, you know. It's like lip syncing, and it made me realize, like, even if she wasn't, it's like it doesn't matter because there's so many layers of anybody can do what she's doing with a computer. Like you literally just, I mean, basically the most creative musicians we have right now are people that literally press buttons and remix other people's stuff. And I mean, when you go to a live show, I mean, you might as well just press play on an iPhone, you know? Like it's performing that you're performing. The technology has gotten to the point now where the machines are doing most of the heavy lifting. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. I understand that. I mean, like the guy I play with, like his voice is great. And, but like in these giant events, it's performing that you're performing. It's performing that you're working. But like it's spectacle. It's not real.
Right.
And so I think this showbiz, showmanship sort of way of doing things has infected our every human endeavor, where people perform like they are a blank. There's a agreed upon ideal, platonic ideal of what this person is, and so they don't even try to be themselves. They just, they've read how to win friends and influence people, and that becomes their identity. And so that's why I do like Peter Thiel's book 0 to 1. It kind of describes what we're trying to get at, whereas most business endeavors in our day and age have become actuarial tables. They're not trying to invest; they're trying to cut back on costs, and they're just trying to mitigate loss. And so it really is more of an exercise in keeping up with the Joneses. It's about reputation. And most of the companies I've worked for, like, the profit is the declared motive, but it really isn't the acted motive. That's an ancillary consideration. They would not know that themselves. But like when you actually come, and I've talked to other people, working in banking and stuff like that, who have come, they went to some symposium and got some ideas, came back with a plan, and the plan is canned because it's too ambitious. And so, and Thiel just dedicates a whole chapter to talking about, pretty much the whole book is talking about how the stagnation that we're seeing in so many of our public institutions and private enterprise is due to this fear of getting too far ahead. So it's like you have to keep up with the Joneses, but you can't get too far ahead because that's going to put a target on you.
Yeah, well, and also connecting with your audience too. Remember that you talked about, I didn't watch it, but you were talking about the
Silicon Valley.
Yeah, Silicon Valley, where it was just so good that nobody
could understand. It was too far ahead of its time. Yeah. So, you got the performative type of work that happens there on the left, and people buy it. People are fine with it. And then you've got, but when you try to do it, it's soul crushing, right? It's just like you can't sleep at night. It's just, you can't do it. You can't.
I can.
I wish I could do a little more of it, but I'm just terrible at it. I can be a good actor, but I can't be a good actor in human interactions. Like I can't. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and Jesus said, "Don't entrust yourself to any man," and I'm horrible with that, man. I just, and it's stupid. I'm just like a kid, like this is what my emotions are always readily available. Anybody can tell what I'm thinking. I should have been an actor. That's what I should have been, but but that's, it's the same sort of scenario. You don't get to be an actor unless you can play the game. And the strategizing part, again, I show my hand always. So don't perform on the one hand. What we're looking for here is work to replace performance and toil. And I don't mean performance in the sense that it works, like something performs well. I don't mean that. I mean performance in the showbiz, like 50,000 people coming together to make Lady Gaga look like she's playing a guitar when she's not. Right. That's what I mean by performance. And I cannot say with all certainty that she was like key syncing there. It's just the realization that it wouldn't matter if she was or not, because a machine could auto-tune, and like even if she played the right notes, the machine would catapult her right to the right note. So it's just it's like performing like you are a virtuoso. So in between that and what we have on the right, Sisyphus, the myth of Sisyphus. So so much work I've seen at the ground level is toil. It's busy work. We experience busy work in the school system. I'm sure my Indian audience has experienced it. We experienced it in America too. It's just stuff that, it's like there's a teacher out, so they have a substitute, and you're literally just like filling in, multiple choice, like questions about nothing. It's all trivial information, and it's toil. Yeah. It just seems like there's no end in sight. You get it done, and as soon as you get it done, you are always rewarded with more toil. You're not rewarded with a like, let's take a break. Let's celebrate the accomplishment of this goal. It's like, oh man, you did so good on that last job. We're giving you 2. Oh, and guess what? Now there's a new position opened up, a new opportunity for advancement. You do well in this one. In addition to 2 jobs, just like the one we gave you, now you get to make your own bricks. Oh, I mean, look at this. You get to become an alchemist. We're giving you less straw. You have to produce more bricks. But when you do, think about the experience that's going to give. Think about the hard-earned lessons you're going to learn, like I've learned as a pharaoh, because I've done all of that. So in between performance and toil is kind of what we want to get back to. And what does work look like? Well, my hypothesis in a perfect world, not a perfect world, but just in a flawed world that's trying to be better, my hypothesis is it looks something like this, keeping these things in mind. Keeping fun in mind at the beginning. And because fun seems like such a frivolous thing to put at the beginning, but if you do not put that as a priority, whether you're the working man or the boss, morale will suffer and you will both burn out, especially in the information age, because you're going to find a path of less resistance. You're just going to find it.
Fun is a good. I mean, basically, what fun is interest. What you're interested in. So if you're not,
right.
Fun is you could use the same. Fun is a word for interest. I mean, if you're interested in something, it's fun, right?
Right, and you think about like all human endeavors are going to have the toil element. I mean, and it could be longer than you want it to be, and most likely it is going to be longer. You're going to hit that wall at some point, and you're going to have to find a way to break through. But you're breaking through for the joy set before you. You got to have a joy set before you in order to scorn the shame of wielding the rock up the hill. Right. And and the notion that with all our technological process, toil should remain unchanged. It's like, well, back in my day, we did it this way. Well, it's not your day, and we all have technological levers that render that moot. So, and what people do is people have this tendency to say, my fun is cool, but your fun is a waste of time. So no one really does examine, their, like maybe in India, it's cricket, like they're addicted to cricket and they watch cricket all the time. But then they'll make fun of somebody for playing video games. Video game, oh, that's a dead end. That's wasting time. And there's a lot of like anti-video game sentiment in the whole self-help world. It's like video games are it just sounds like a bunch of old people complaining about the future. It's like me complaining about TikTok. It's like, oh, TikTok's just stupid. Oh, blah, blah, blah. Well, I mean, there's a reason people are corralling around it,
Yeah.
So fun at the top, just not that the whole process is going to be fun. But there's, you think about like the craziest of human endeavors, there is like this fun element of the challenge. Can it be done? Can you scale this hill and vanquish the enemy? Can you build this tower, in the time constraint? So you do have to count the cost, and but what you don't want to do is let the shit roll down. Like by putting fun at the top, you help mitigate that self-indulgent impulse to pawn it off on somebody else. Think about their morale. And one of the things I keep coming back to with this whole discussion is that in League, they say don't force the fight unless it's unless you've done the math. You've calculated the odds. Don't force. So you need to do all these other things. And if you make farming fun, if you get used to like, that's the challenge. I'm gonna farm. But League, I think is just a great algorithm. League and Dota are both great algorithms, the kind of artistic algorithms we're talking about, because no two games are ever following quite the same pattern. One game it's a farm fest, another game it's a team fight fest. The other team decides to play really aggressive and against the way the game is supposed to be played, like to an absurd degree. How are you going to find a way to punish them? So you have to adapt. So it is that adaptive artistic algorithm, right? And like that game, that's one of the reasons I like it so much, is because it, unlike so many older games, there's just so much more complexity to the adaptive element. And that's the adaptive part is the thing that I think, in the words of Nassim Taleb, like you have to be anti-fragile. You have to be resilient, and so that you don't open yourself all up to all these attack vectors. And if you are opening yourself up to these attack vectors, you've learned to be to dance with finesse through them. But you can't force. Like, really, if every obstacle that comes your way, you try to force your way through it, you're not going to make it in this milieu. Like, you have to find a way to finesse. And so finesse comes before force. Flow comes before finesse, because finesse is really, and this gets into the surfing metaphor a little more. When you see like guys, especially like a guy like Mick Fanning, he was a world champion surfer. When you see how he moves, he's just so agile. It's just like these cat-like reflexes. One of the new world champion contenders, my brain is Gabriel Medina. He's just so nimble on his feet. It's just insane how high he can get in these airs, and he just has flow. Both those guys just symbolize, like personify, incarnate flow. And flow is that economy of movement. And we kind of discussed that's important, like in a kitchen when you're producing food. You gotta have your mise en place, is what they call it. Like in cinema, we say mise en scène. It's like the setup of the scene. But in the kitchen, they call it mise en place. It's the way that you prepare your space to make the food. And so your mise en place has to be immaculate, and it has to have an order. And it doesn't have to look like everyone else's necessarily, but it has to fit your flow. And so what we're looking for, a framework that is a mise en place. There's an element of fun in creating food. But there is an element of toil, because you're doing the same thing over and over. So you need to have that function realized, and you need to have a mise en place and an economy of movement that fits the function. And you need to put it in a format, so the format of Five Guys versus the format of the Cheesecake Factory versus the format of some Michelin star restaurant. Like, those are all different formats, but that doesn't mean that they're inferior in terms of their fun, function, finesse, and flow, right? And so you have to know what form you're actually going for. And so you'll often see people, this is one of, I think, the biggest criticisms you'll face, and I meant to mention this earlier, the Mercer metaphor in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. One of the biggest examples that you're going to face or problems you're going to face when you try to get your input-output ratio, when you're trying to create more and consume less, you're going to find people attack you on the form issue probably more than anything. They're going to ignore the fun part. They're going to ignore the function part. They're going to ignore your flow. And they're just going to pick one thing that is their pet peeve. And they're going to throw... So in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, Mercer is going up this hill and people are just throwing rocks at him. And he's just like getting bloodied by these rocks. Like every time, it's just like the presumption of this idiot to walk up the hill. Like, oh, does he think he's some kind of better than us? Like, I know your place, shut your mouth, get back down the hill, idiot. And you're going to run into that all the time. I mean, YouTube comments is a perfect example. Twitter. I mean, it's just this sort of like... peanut gallery heckling constantly. They're gonna call out one single format issue or form issue. If you're working out and you're bodybuilding or whatever, it's like, or maybe not even bodybuilding, just working out. Like you do a push-up, it's not enough that you did the push-up. Oh, your form's crap. It's like, okay, well, let me see you do it. And then you see them do it and you're like, okay, I guess that's better than me. Like someone finds like one little autistic detail to focus on, and they use that as the litmus test to judge your entire enterprise. And so if you get stuck on the form too long, you'll never move past it to get to flow. So there are people who are totally perfectly formal, but they have no flow. They have no finesse. They can't hit it with force. When as soon as they add a little more power, like the whole thing falls apart, the form goes to hell. So these are all just parts, right? And so I think in the human endeavors or human actions, we need all these things. Maury 912. Well, you can think that something is stupid without destroying it for others. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think, when people are starting out, they're going to do stuff that's stupid. Yeah. It's not going to be good. And when you throw a rock at them and say that they're, a piece of shit because they dared to waste your time with this thing that you put out on the internet or whatever, you can really take the wind out of their sails. In a sense, you're doing them a public service because you're just getting it out of the way because they need to grow a thicker skin. I mean, I guess you could read it that way. But I think there are some people that it just takes more time. And some people don't even realize. You can tell them, or like for me with my color correction, there's still times I'll just look at it and like, I know this isn't right, but I don't know why. Like the skin tone's wrong, but I don't know why. I don't know how to fix it. I watch video after video. It's just, some things are just opaque. It's just like we all have a blind spot somewhere. And if you are going to throw the stone, like try to, give them a pillow too, like, well, hey, I really like this part. I mean, you can do it without destroying it. And that's true too in like pop culture. Like there are things that people like that you probably don't, and that we're all a little fed up with, but that impulse to be the codger, this like everything's crap movies today, music's terrible, like, you can still think it's stupid without telling everyone and, ruining everyone's day.
Right.
Just being this soothsayer always, well, like negative soothsayer, just spitting meanness. But yeah, trying to find a way between performance and toil is part of what this whole moving from force to flow. Because my tendency is I get an idea and I jump right to force. And that's definitely not how to win friends and influence people. Let's put it that way. Carm Diaz, a compliment sandwich. Yeah, that's good. A compliment sandwich. You the meat is in the middle, and you sandwich it with two nice things to make the meat go down easier. The pill, make the pill easier to swallow. Right.
Spoonful
of sugar makes. There you go. I mean, hey, timeless wisdom from Mary Poppins.
Hey, man.
Improbable One says those who criticizing your form are one thing. Unlike you, they are probably not trying to be a master of many things, and that's the thing that you have to take into account when I have to take criticism with a grain of salt. And if you can take one of the best, I wish I could find this. I mentioned this quite a few times, but there was a podcast called Creative Screenwriting. And then he changed the name over time. What was the guy's name? Here's your buddy here. He had a very, creative screenwriting. And he did this like e-zine for a while there. It was called, oh man, I can't even remember it. Anyways, he did interviews with people and they're really good. Like he interviewed a lot of big screenwriters and producers and stuff. So he had a panel with these different screenwriters, and they were talking about, and he asked them the question. So in the industry, the term is note. Like it's a criticism from a producer or somebody above you in the chain of command. Mm-hmm. So you get a note, and so you asked on stuff to change, and so you asked these people, these screenwriters, what is an example of some bad notes that you've got? And some of them, it's Dunning-Kruger in its insanity. Like it's the kind of notes they were getting were just so nitpicky, but missing the point, straining at gnats and swallowing camels. So it's like, it's literally like, oh man, there is this little tiny gnat here. Okay, good, we got that. Now put a camel in the tea. Like it's not just straining at gnats and swallowing camels. It's straining at gnats and deciding willfully to put a camel that's a rotting carcass of a camel into the tea. So there's just some terrible notes that these screenwriters had gotten by producers or directors or whatever. And but in one case, someone said, and this was really, it's hard to ever see the other side. It's easy for the working man to talk shit about the boss. It's easy for the boss to talk shit about the working man. And both of them see themselves as Sisyphus and see the other as the performer. That's kind of the reality of this problem we have whenever we have a dialectic. You see yourself as the hero or the martyr, and you see the other person as the faker. But these people were able to see past that dialectic and realize maybe the guy's right, he just doesn't know how to articulate it. So in that sense, like the producer's kind of a shaman. He knows that the audience isn't going to like it, but he's not a film dude. So he can't like put it in film terms. So he gives a prescription that is totally wrong. It's going to mess everything up. But if you can interpret the note, like the producer didn't take the time to interpret the scene, but if you can interpret the note, then you might be able to meet in the middle with something that the producer's like, yeah, that's it. That's what I meant, man. That's beautiful. Yeah. And then it's fine. So they gave an example. They were doing some show for Disney or Nickelodeon or something. And like, it was some super show. And there was they had a problem with the budget, I think. And to do this fight with the big bad was going to cost way too much money. And, they'd written this whole scene. And they're like, well, how can we show the scene without showing the action? It's just like this guy's asking for the impossible. And then all of a sudden it just hit them. They're like, what if we just don't show the scene at all? What if we just cut to them being beaten, them like getting knocked out? Yeah. And it's just, we just skip the whole thing. And so they just wrote it that way. I was like, this actually works. Usually there is, and that made the producers happy because now it costs less. It's like, oh wow, there's actually a solution. And so we are looking for solutions that the third path, to thread the needle, and that's the dancing idea,
Yeah. Well, it's like you've said before in our discussions. We're looking for the bug in the code, right? We're looking for. It's like we're saying today, the right algorithm.
Yeah, we're looking for that right, and using that term algorithm, I think helps to see it's more of an if-then. It's kind of like a flow chart, but it's even a little more. It's more robust than a flow chart. Like it can't fit on one page, and that's the thing that's hard to figure this out. Like really, I need if I had any computer programming, ability. Oh, I know what I should do. Back when we were in high school, we had those TI 84 and 85 graphing calculators.
Yeah.
And so it started in middle school. So as a middle school, we had a study hall, and there was a guy, Clyde. I think he might have dropped it and said, hey, one or two times. But we had this desire to go to Area 51 in 1990. Was it 93, 92? Somewhere around then. Like Area 51 was all the rage because of X-Files and all this stuff. And so we would take these TI graphing calculators, and we were like making maps on the graph, like using the programming part, which was meant just to program rudimentary math problems and stuff, on the graphing calculator. But we used it and figured out you could actually like make pictures and things like that. And so then I got to, and we got more and more sophisticated using it. And I don't know what base, it's like BASIC or something like that. It's some old, old fashioned programming. Even calling it a language is probably being generous. But then in high school, when I was in calculus, I got a C or a D in calculus because all I did was try to remake. They had a game called Seaman. It was Pac-Man, but it was a little C, and you drive it around. You played it was Pac-Man with a C, and so I was trying to figure out how to do that. I made a rudimentary RPG where you're this little dot and you walked around, and you would have like a turn-based battle system. It would pop up. So like that's the only real programming aside from, smatterings of HTML. So I probably should go back and just get one of those because I think it'll be like riding a bicycle. Like I'll remember how like it was so easy compared to when you try to learn these languages. I'm like, it is not. This is exactly what Monica was saying at Silicon Valley. It feels engineered. You're like, wait a minute, this is the term you thought makes more sense than go to? Like instead of go to, they have some crazy, and they make up things like, oh, you got a factory and you've got dude, all that stuff goes in one ear and out the other. You called this a factory? It's just, oh man, these languages and their verbiage is just insufferable, dude. And it makes you understand how human language is not like machine language because it's so much more, well, it's almost more Steve Jobs-esque. It's more intuitive, and it's more like it breaks its own rules. Like it's kind of whimsical, And so I think what I need to find a way to make my flow path, my algorithm, like a human language version of a computer program, with like how many lines. That's what I need to figure out. How many lines of code is my algorithm going to be? And then, you leave at certain junctures in the program like in programs you have that. You have a human interaction thing, right? Like, if you, it's an if then, like, oh, do you select A, B, C, or D? Or, or there's a numeric value. What are you doing today, dude? What are you doing? Like attacking everything. You're trying.
What's your cat's name?
Loon means moon. Loon means moon in French.
In a lot of languages.
Yes, I call her Lune when I'm
including English. Lunar.
It's Lune with a little like thing on it or whatever.
Yeah. La Lune.
La Lune.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're having the Alabama boys, guys I was working with a while, still living across the street. They're going to come over and be our first guests to have a few beers, maybe some chai, and they helped put in some of the floor. Oh my gosh, dude! Nice. It was after a full day of work. We were like, oh, we were over it. We were over it. We're like, man, this floor, I'm about to just break it into it.
Oh no!
I did a couple of those where you measure it 3 times and you cut once, and then you realize I still measured it wrong.
Oh no!
We got our buddy Tim has hired our friend Faust to finish up a lot of this, and he's just a workhorse, dude. Like I get stuck on a detail and just go in a circle, I get in this feedback loop, and he's just making it happen. So thank God for him.
Awesome. So everything's done. The floor is done.
No, the floor is done in the kids' bedrooms, and we're sleeping in Rohan's room. So the kids are bunked up in one room for now, Satya's room.
Okay.
Which apparently Rohan snores or something. So he's been a little bit sick. And then we got the hall bathroom that we're all sharing. And then the floor in the living room is good. Everything's painted. The kitchen is pretty close to being done. They put like this faux shiplap. I mean, I thought they made it look great. And then, so Faust is working in the bedroom, the master bedroom and bath. So he was taking up some floor yesterday. And so, yeah, it looks like he's making real progress. And we're trying to figure out how to coordinate it. Sometimes we're like, oh, you can be there, and but
how much left do you feel like there is?
There's probably, I don't know. That would have to be a question for them because I overestimate or underestimate. I never get it right. I have no idea. I feel like it won't be done for 2 months, but it could. I don't know. I mean, Could be less than that. I mean, he moves a lot quicker than I can think. So,
Do you overestimate for other people and underestimate for you?
it
That's what I do.
depends. It
Like,
depends
if
on the
other people are
thing.
doing it, I'm like, it's gonna take forever. If I'm doing it, like, I can do this in a week.
It depends on the thing. In general, I've learned that with handy stuff, I probably overestimate at this point because I have no faith in myself.
Interesting.
If it's video stuff, I almost always underestimate.
Yeah, I always underestimate. Any kind
Yeah,
of
and
technology
it's
stuff.
creative stuff, man. Like I was sold, dude. I was sold. Like this was gonna be my new property. This music video idea, and then I started working on it. I literally got about a foot in, like my foot just in the pool, right? And I'm like, shit. So I'm think I'm back to the drawing board on that. I think where I am when it comes to music is I think I'm going to just all in. I think I'm just going to all in on this. You know the epic music cover I did of Nugget and a Biscuit?
Yeah,
That to me is one of the best things I've ever made.
absolutely.
And I just need to do that until one of them, gets some modicum of internet, whether it's on TikTok or YouTube, but make it original, purely original. Now the melody, I took Toby Turner's Nugget and a Biscuit song but I'd written this whole little symphony for our store. I was going to make an advertisement for the music store that I worked for.
Oh, okay.
And I could never it just never could get it together. Well, I just took the melody from that and played it on violin. Like it was going to be a song, like people were going to sing it. So I took that melody and I just somehow transposed it into Toby's key, and it worked. So I've been sitting on that because it's a lot of work. I mean, you're having to, notate like all this stuff. So, but I realize I just need to bite the bullet and do the proof of work. I already have the proof of concept. Let's refine the proof of concept with some proof of work. Just 10 minutes a day. Let me write a measure and record a measure. I don't know. I needs to be elemental, and that's my problem is I get ahead of myself. And a while ago, this might be good, especially for Improbable One, if you're still here. One of my problems has been the underestimating the amount of time when it comes to video projects, and I would try to force. So I would just try to force it within the day. I'm like, I'm going to get this thing done. You get into the zone, you get stuck, as a computer programmer says, and the world goes away, and you're there, and you're moving, and that's why the stereotype of the computer programmer just listen to dubstep or whatever. It's like, whoa. And, video editing be kind of the same thing. You get into the zone and you're out. But one day he kind of confronted me. He's like, Ford, you're going to have to get this out of your head that you're finishing videos in a day. I can't remember what I was working on, but it was a kind of delicate thing, and it required more, but I was forcing it. I was like, I'm going to finish it today. He's like, dude, you got to get out of that mentality. Because sometimes you need it to breathe, and so there's that impatient urge just to move on to the next thing. Well, it betrays a lack of it betrays a lack of foresight, and it betrays a lack of care for the thing to mature. Because some things just need time. You can't force it. It'd be like, maybe that should be a good sketch. It's like the hyper work ethic guy, and he's got a baby. He's like, okay, come on now. You've had enough milk. We're going to start eating some steak today. We're going to all meat diet today. Come on, look at your form of those push-ups. What are you?
Well, and it goes to, I think, what I've learned about the human brain is the human brain has certain rhythms, man. Your brain has certain rhythms.
Yep.
If you try to force it, it's just not. I think we can like force it to our brains to do certain things, but there's a limit. There's always a limit. And those of us that try to force it we'll force it to a level like, oh, I've never seen that level before, like I'm getting so much, and then we'll force it. We'll try
Just
to force
go a
it
little
even
too
further.
And that, again, why League of Legends is such a teaching tool to me, because it happens all the time where you get an advantage, you get a kill, you take the tower, and then you stay for another wave of minions. You always just, I'll be able to stay for one. And then you get ganked and you die. Yeah. And so you just gave away half the advantage that you gained. So, it is just the clown fiesta. It's just a rubber band. It's just, and you see that in poker a lot too, where someone gets on a hot streak, and the streak ends and the person thinks it hasn't noticed that it's ended, So, and then they just give it all back. And I do that all the time. I'm really guilty of that. Karim Diaz, couple last comments. Lol, a friend compared Sanskrit to a computer language with rules, but at the same time, it encompasses so much poetry. I think a lot of our ancient, languages with pedigree, with this classical pedigree, there's something kind of mystical to them. And I don't think that that's always without merit. Like there's something because they thought differently. They were seeing some things I think that we overlook because we're so used to machines and printing presses. We're so used to all the characters that we see looking exactly the same. Yeah. With fonts, I think it is kind of probably helping us to get a little bit more. But even just the uniformity of the letters within that font, there's a programmatic, like epistemology of like the we think that we're seeing the world as it is, but we're actually forcing programs on things that actually don't exist. Like, So I think some of those classical languages are good to study because it kind of takes you back like a time machine to some stuff that we tend to lose. And the poetry aspect too. I mean, I'll see Christians do this a lot with Old Testament books like Proverbs or Psalms, which are very poetic, and they will interpret them as a science textbook sort of thing when that wasn't the intent. Like it's a poem. Like you don't go to Shakespeare for quantum physics, And so, but I see people with religion doing that a lot when you go back to old sacred texts. There's a magic, to it, and I don't mean magic like in the superstitious sense. I mean like there's something that just defies human ability.
Je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, there's a je ne sais quoi that defies the human ability to categorize it, and our tendency is to reduce everything down to a logical positivism like materialism. Carm says, you sound a lot like me, Ford. How much of a perfectionist are you? That's a lot of my problem, chasing the elusive. And we want to nurse, we just want to refine that and make it so that it actually works, so that it doesn't just, so that we're not just faking it to be performers, when people are looking, and then just letting it go once our heart has moved on to something else.
Well, and so the perfect isn't the enemy of the good, right? You don't want to destroy the good for trying to reach the perfect.
Right. It is hard. It's hard because I think what is defined as good in a current system is, from our perspective, just a compromise too great to bear. So that is that difficulty of figuring out where a perfectionist fits in. Mm-hmm. And, in our perfectionisms are it's like Improbable One says, like, I'm not a perfectionist in one area. So it definitely opens me up to justifiable criticism in other areas. So
going back to what you're saying about not being able to do something in one day and forcing, made me think about Sabbath and how important Sabbath is. So
yeah,
I find myself like,
right.
I find myself just going weeks and weeks without taking a break, and why have I hit a wall?
Right. You need
Sabbaths are important.
You need those shower thoughts. You need that time to decompress. Like for me, surfing. Like I had a really rejuvenative surfing session the other day. Like for the Hindu viewers, Sabbath is a Jewish concept that Christians often talk about, but it's really a Jewish idea, and it's the seventh day of the week is the day that you take your break and you don't do any work, and so you spend that time. In some amount of religious devotion, but it's really just meant to be a rest. God rested on the seventh day is how the story goes. And I think every religion has some version of that to some degree. And so, going to temple could be kind of considered a Sabbath-like, darshan. There are certain like rhythms, I think, that are just kind of endemic to the human being, that there was a realization that if you just force all the time, Like the Jews had this thing, they called it the Jubilee year. Like every seventh year, they would let the land rest or whatever. And then the 49th year, they would revert. Like all contracts were reverted, and everyone just went back to square one. Like it's like wild. It's like capitalism for 49 years, and the 50th year, it's like, all right, back to beginning. Like, how do you even clean slate? I mean, how do you even litigate that, or like, what's the bureaucratic protocol to make that happen? Whoa, you talk about like people getting mad over the death of a loved one, like turning against each other. But anyways, like just that idea of rhythm, like letting the land rest, and letting your soul rest. Like it's hard to remember that in the technological age, especially because, like think about New York, the city that never sleeps. I mean, there's always something going on, man. Yeah. So, so try to find your rest, whatever that is. And yeah, for me surfing this week, I went out not expecting anything. I was just like, I need a slap in the face. I need some water in my face, and that water's cold. And I'd misplaced my GoPro camera door. So I couldn't put it on my surfboard. So I was like, all right, well, whatever, dude. I'm going to go. I'm just going to go. So I think it was maybe Wednesday night. I'm not sure. And, I think it was Wednesday evening. I went, and there was a crowd of a few people. It wasn't too busy, but I ended up right on this little side, like kind of between, and a few, I don't know, it's gotten to a rhythm. It was like a good run of poker, like where I can't really take credit for it, but I'm sure I still look like a chimp. My form is still probably chimpish, but it was the fastest I've moved in a really long time. And the flow felt right, even if the form wasn't. The flow felt good, and that's why it's just why you surf, and I just felt good, and I went normally you get the one more wave syndrome. I was like, I'll just get one more. Like this time I left without even I caught a wave. I was like, all right, that's good, and I left. It was like an hour and a half session, which is unusual. And then the next day I went out, and it was just I decided I'm just gonna go just to get the exercise. And it was because the quote unquote storm was coming.
Yeah.
And so I got out there before dawn because I was just afraid they were going to not let anybody in. So I got there. I went on the jetties. I did some quasi yoga. It's like the white person yoga. It's just basically like
downward dog.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. And so I was just doing that, breathing and watching it because it was so dark I couldn't even see where the waves are breaking. So finally, all right, so I went out there. I'm the only dude out, and it's windy as hell. And I look up, and there's a dude, in his wetsuit, skulking through the water. I'm like, what? It's like, where did that guy? Does he have a surfboard? So what is going on? And I turned around. I was like, did I imagine? Am I going crazy? Because there's nobody around. The wind is whipping,
Weird.
And so then I look, and sure enough, I see this little head pop up and these feet. I was like, this dude's body surfing in this storm.
Wow.
And so he swims out right next to the rocks, and the way our jetties work, when the wind is howling out of the east, it creates a reverse rip current. This, breakwaters and jetties, they do weird things to the currents. So what will happen is you'll paddle out 100 yards west of the jetties, and it'll suck you right into the jetties. You won't have to do anything. So you don't even have to worry, really. If you catch a wave, you just go to the beach, walk down a little bit, paddle out just a little, and it sucks you right back where you need to be to catch the waves. But that sucking force tries to pull you out to sea, too. So he's caught in this undertow rip, it's pulling him right into the jetties. I'm looking at the dude. He's like, hey, there's a good left over here. I'm like, yeah. I kept looking at him dude, are you going to get out of that thing? And he's stuck in an eddy. I'm like, that dude's just a maniac. Well, it turns out, I know I've seen the guy. I didn't know. I can't remember his name, but yeah, I told my friend about it. I was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, that dude's awesome. He just swims out into the middle of the oblivion, and just has a good time. He probably had a better time than me, but because of him, I got close to the rocks because I was just curious. And what happens is the waves refract off the rocks and create this. They meet up with the main wave, and it's a wedge effect is what they call it. And so, but this is the first time since nobody else was there, I was able to have it all to myself. And he was usually having to be a little bit further inside as a body surfer, so I was able to get in position to go the full way. And I got like 3 waves on this day that it's just the wind is, blowing ridiculously, and they were so fun. So that kind of thing, I guess, find the thing for you. Like I buried my surfing talent for years going to India, and I just thought, oh, well, it's just a pastime. But like, there's something about the rhythm of surfing for me that's just, it's indelible, and trying to erase it and move on and, become a man and put away childish things. Like, I tried doing that, and it's just, it doesn't really, I just don't resonate correctly, so find your thing that is rejuvenating and definitely
the rhythm.
The rhythm and
algorithm.
The rhythm in your algorithm. So thanks, those of you who have been here. Appreciate it. We'll just keep kind of unpacking this. I know this is we're covering the same territory over and over, just as I'm trying to figure this out. Really, I'm talking to myself here, and to Judah, and hopefully the two of us can mine something out of this. And so, on these type of for the foreseeable future, if you got anything, that's in this vein about, I'm thinking about it like time management, I guess, is one way the form that is kind of used. Time management, self-help, like those are the two things, and trying to figure out my own way of doing it that wouldn't be like it, that would be more customizable than most of these things where you can customize. I heard a great podcast. Here's my podcast recommendation. I think his name is John Carmack. He was on Rogan. He's the guy that behind Quake and Doom, and he's apparently developing Oculus, the VR technology. Super nerdy dude, and just not what I expected one of the main guys behind Doom to sound like, and just so refreshing. Like, it was one of the most refreshing Rogan podcasts I've heard probably in a year. Because he talked about how they made Doom open source, and it was a real controversial decision, because he's like, Doom will exist forever because it is open source and you can put it on any platform imaginable pretty much at this point.
Interesting.
But
I didn't know that.
he had to fight for that because the pros, the business people, VizDev or whatever, like, oh man, you're giving away our intellectual property, it's terrible, blah blah blah. And, so it was it was a difficult thing to navigate, but eventually they settled on a compromise that they would allow the open source a year after they sold the product. So they still sell it after that, but anybody has access to it and they can just hack it and put it on whatever, man, that to me, that is my whole. So when I hear people with this scorched earth, well, this is what capitalism looks like, this is how you run a business, you have to fight for every inch of everything. It's like, no, that is not true. It is because of Linux that the web, the infrastructure for the web exists. It's because of open source that you are allowed to enforce this outmoded, strip mining, scorched earth tactic of business. And you pretending that you using the internet to enforce that is somehow innovative.
Yeah.
It's actually only ensuring that you will not weather the next IT, revolution that's going to make this previous one. Like, we haven't even got to the end of the crypto revolution yet, and with most of us still not understanding how that thing works.
Yeah.
But most of us still don't really appreciate what's going on with the internet. Like, it is basically the abolition of privacy. Like, if you want to use the internet, if you want to use the internet, like, you have used that genie, and that knife cuts both ways. So the open source idea, like, I want to kind of follow in Carmack's mode. Oh, did I forget to? What's wrong, buddy? Did I forget to put the iPad? It's not on mommy's table? Maybe I forgot to put it. All right, we'll find it. But I follow Carmack's with this time management protocol that kind of cobbled together using easily available means for people to hold themselves accountable. I think the thing I need some sort of accountability thing, because the artistic side of me wants to just force, let's just make it happen. Like, oh, don't bother me with the details. I'm going to the moon. Don Quixote, it's just total chaotic. All right, well, we're gonna go show the Bama boys our new place. So, Godspeed to everyone. We'll keep unpacking this, and if y'all got ideas, feel free to, you can message me on Instagram. You can email me at thesurfingviolinist@gmail.com. You can message the Facebook page too. That works, I guess. Twitter, Ford Light the Car. That works too. If you've got some ideas in this thing that are helping you with time management and,
Well, the two things I'm taking away from this for this week is proof of work. I'm going to work hard on doing something small every day, and I'm just going to look at my rhythms. I just want to look at my rhythms, I'm not going to try to change anything. I just want to see where do I burn out this week, and where do I does it
when I've had to do like accounting time accounting sort of things for whether it was a school program or something like that, like when I was learning Hindi, you'd have to keep track of how many hours you did practicing whatever part of it was. Because if you don't have the time, that language is a perfect example of that. If you don't have the time, you ain't getting it. It just doesn't passively happen. Language, you have to actively do it and make mistakes and look like a friggin' idiot. And the great thing about learning a language in most places, people are just like, wow, you're trying. Awesome. I don't make fun of you, but they're really have respect for you for trying. And they make fun, the way that you say stuff will make them chuckle, but it's endearing, So, but you've got to have that time. So that proof of work, I think that's good though. What I would notice in that is there would be sometimes it would be demoralizing because you're like, man, I feel like I'm walking in place. But it would help you identify pressure points, that, maybe areas that are sapping you of your energy and your joy. So yeah, proof of work, holding yourself accountable. I'm going to put on that just for our purposes. I'm going to switch these around just so
which one?
On the flow chart. I'm going to add. Oh man, I just got a shock in my nose of Angel for Men, and I have not sprayed it at all. It's like my brain just was like, amen, and I smelled it. Let there be scent. That was weird, dude. Some Madeline stuff.
I wonder if you sprayed a little on your microphone or something.
Well, that's weird. Maybe so. Okay, so I'm gonna put here for us to I'm gonna put it in red or something, so that I'll remember to talk about this. But the idea is incrementalism. So that we're looking for a proof of work that is not like I'm gonna finish this in a day because I'm amazing. Ford, stop it. You're being an idiot. Incrementalism, and then I'm gonna put. Oh, let's see. Can I do insert a line? Hey, cool. An arrow. Yes, I want an arrow.
What program are you using?
Proof of mood. No, I don't want proof of work. This is in Google Sheets.
Yeah, just Google Sheets.
So, thanks, Google. We appreciate it. We do. I mean, actually.
And Google says, we appreciate you.
We appreciate you're the product. You're the currency. You're the fungible material from which we build our empire. You're welcome. Have you seen any of Picard? New Star Trek?
No. Have you?
Oh, man, I hate it, dude.
Really?
Yeah, the first episode I actually was like, I was willing to give it some leeway. It's like Kantbot said on the Tech Wars podcast. He said it's like every one of these things has the same thing. It's like, it's basic. All they're doing is riffing off of Serenity Firefly, because it's River. Every single show is just basically River. It's this superhuman with, psychic abilities or something, and she can beat everyone up.
Her.
Yeah, gotta help her find her whatever. And so Picard, I mean, he's so old, dude, and he walks into this meeting with this lady, and she said the F word on CBS, and it was so like jarring because my kid's there, I mean, I'm not like a teetotaler with cussing anymore. I cuss on here.
You're no prude.
But it was just so jarring, and it just didn't fit the Star Trek universe and on CBS. And it was almost like she winked at the camera when she said it. I'm a woman, and I can say the F word to Patrick Stewart whenever I want. Oh, what are you going to do about it, incels? It was just like that. It was just like that level of like, oh, it's our turn now. And everyone just had a collective like, oh, cringe, dude. It's so.
Well, we haven't even started watching it because you have to watch it through like CBS. How do you watch it?
CBS app. I mean, I was expecting it to be a little less of that than the Discovery show, which was that like nonstop. It was just like, oh, it's the ladies' turn now. Like every episode, just like bang, bang. It felt like an evangelical Christian sermon. Like, how many times can you mention Jesus in one sentence? And then, but no, so it's better, but I just feel like you can get all this stuff. All this stuff is asked and answered. If we're going to talk about artificial intelligence, Data, his whole bit. I mean, he makes a cameo here, but his whole bits in Star Trek Next Generation, they really tapped into this great body of work from Asimov to Philip K. Dick to William Gibson. So I mean, there was great discussions of artificial intelligence. And you think about the Blade Runner versions, that have already been done. So it almost feels asked and answered. It's like, why do I need to watch this show?
They're trying to do the
It's about AI, and of course, like what was that one show that was all about the Cylons, Battlestar Galactica?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the new version of Battlestar Galactica was all about the Cylons, right? Like, it was all about synth life. And so, and they even call them synthetics. I'm like, why didn't you call them androids? Like, you're importing terms from other, I don't know, like the whole thing. Different. It feels.
Did you watch it? Did you watch Battlestar Galactica, the new one?
No, I only watched a little bit of it.
So good. Hey, you know what I think tackles AI really well without it being all up in your face is the new Lost in Space Netflix original.
Really?
Oh man, yeah. You might not like it. Some people don't like it, but because like you have to remind yourself that they're talking about AI because it's kind of like a robot / alien,
right.
They're trying to interface with. Love it. I love it. And the graphics are. I was just thinking about the graphics the other day, and like, how do they? Most of that must be green screen, and
right.
yet, like, I can't see it at all. I think
that's
it's
impressive.
real.
Yeah, I think before I do that, I've realized I've never watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, and so I just need to go back because I've realized like it's taken me so late in life to realize, oh, Stanley Kubrick was not hyped. He's just the man, Like it's just. I went back and watched a little bit of Paths of Glory. I think I mentioned it on this, and how he just won me over in 5 minutes, like. And it's an old black and white movie. I started trying to watch The Killing. I didn't get too far into it, but I think I'll probably finish that one. It's just about a heist, and it's just serviceable. And what I like about him is an artist that's not afraid to be serviceable. He just makes the scene work. He's not afraid of making the scene work, and that allows him to break the artist like a visionary. And he's not even breaking the artist like a pro. He's breaking the rules like a visionary.
Interesting.
And so I would like to go back and catch up with his entire body of work. His oeuvre. How do you say it? Oeuvre. His oeuvre. I want to go catch up with his oeuvre.
Uber that stuff.
Uber. Uber. That can be the redneck Uber, but it's for creativity. Uber. It's like Fiverr. There you go. It's Fiverr for us white trash. Uber. Hey, this is your body of work. You pay $5 to access to everything I've ever done in perpetuity. Uber. Gyro says, but then everything that isn't innate and at which we are currently sucking is demoralizing and frustrating, isn't it? Yes, it is. It is demoralizing when you move. This is the problem with trying to be the jack of all trades, jack of many trades, connector of all trades. You hit the wall, and you're trying to force, and you're like, it like bleeds out of that area, and you feel like I'm a failure at every perceivable metric. I'm the worst thing ever. And so you really have to quarantine. Oh man, quarantine your demoralization here. I'm gonna
Well, it's hard though because I put all of my significance into that one thing, and if I do not succeed to my enjoyment, to the level which I want to succeed, it's demoralizing. It really is demoralizing.
Yes, it is. So I'm putting that over here for us to discuss next week. Quarantine your demoralization. And so if you can get your incrementalism proof of work algorithm,
yes,
then you need to I've started League totally over. I'm on a new account. I'm not going to tell anybody what it is. I'm not friending anybody. I'm solo queuing this thing to the end. Like I'm committed to League. Like this is my position. Like I'm fighting over this hill. I'm going to make it in League of Legends, one way or another. And so that way is I'm not going to get boosted. I'm not going to let anybody help me. I'm going to figure it out. So I'm picking Ari. She's a mage, like a DPS mage, and I mean she's kind of an assassin, sort of, but like I don't know. I'm still kind of not good with her playstyle at all. And when you pick a mage like that, her CSing is terrible. Her last hits to actually get the minions. And so I'm just doing bad. And so every day I've got my what perfect CS is numbers at time minutes, because I forget that when I'm in game. I got it like on a piece of paper. And I'm looking at that and it's demoralizing. You're like, oh, I thought I was doing good. Like, nope. Yeah. Nope, you're getting carried.
Does she have area effect of any?
She really is kind of like an assassin mage, but the way her spells work out is it's like a mobility. Like it really comes down to you being adept at moving in and out, and just.
Oh my God! Why would you pick that character?
She was free. It was one of the free ones. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and so I'm starting in the deep end and kind of working my way back to, like, I'm not gonna let myself play Renekton on this account.
Okay.
And by the time I think I get to Renekton, I don't think people will be able to stop me. I mean, I think my Renekton play is actually really good, but you have to have an array of attack vectors. So a guy I follow the League of Legends India Facebook page, and he got to Challenger on the India server, which they call Garena. It's not really India. It's Singapore, Malaysia, southern Thailand, and so in India. But he got to Challenger, and people are like, "Oh, well, it's not that great of a region." It's like, dude, if you get to Challenger, it doesn't matter. Like, you're the man. Like, that's because they're like, it's so toxic because you've got all these different, ethnic groups and all these different language blocks, even in India alone. But everyone cusses in, like, I'm not sure what it's like, a Malaysian dialect or something. And so everyone's constantly said whatever the term was. I looked it up. It means literally like vagina penis or something like that. Like, that's what they say to your brother. So like, it's like when you think that you have like gotten to the dregs. This is one of the other reasons why I like League, because it's so cross cultural. You think you got to the dregs of your own civilization, like, oh, we're all dregs. We're all just assholes. So yeah, but
All right.
anyways, like when you get,
So you're not filming it because you don't want
no.
anybody to.
no, I don't want anyone to know my account name. And like I was in a game with a Draven the other day who really carried hard, and I was like, his name was kind of odd, and there were certain things he did and said. I was like, wait a minute, and my queue time was really long, which is unusual. I was like, is my MMR good? It's like, wait a minute, was that Tyler 1? And so I went and looked, and Tyler 1 is unranking to Challenger. And I was scrubbed back. I was like, no. And I was like,
Wait, so you played with Tyler?
no. That's. I was stupid enough to think that I had. Like, it was a Draven, it was real good, and he just had there's some way he said a few things. I was like, it was just a little, and his name was an allusion to Tyler 1. It was like Team of Dogs or something like that. And so
he was a Tyler
split-
1 wannabe.
Yeah, for a split second, I was like, I went and checked Tyler 1's stream. I was like, dude, was I supporting Tyler 1? Like, no, I wasn't. So my delusions of grandeur are still firmly intact. But yeah, so if you hit the wall, exogenesis. That's an interesting spelling of that. Now I'm having another delusion of grandeur. I'll let that one go. Thank you for the subscription. Exogenesis. So this week, if you hit the wall, quarantine your demoralization and try to move on to the next thing. So like I'm trying to be adaptive. Here, I'm going to put another arrow here. This is just, just one more, just one more.
Love it though. I love it. It's we're building it as we're speaking.
So adaptive, quarantine your demoralization. Adaptive, when you hit the demoralization thing, you go hit the punching bag. You go do some yoga. You go surfing.
So it almost should be a circle, right? Like somehow we should.
See a clock. That's just too. Again, for my purposes, like it's not going to suit the surfing violinist. Like adaptive, improvisational. Mm-hmm. Like you need to be able to shift phase. Remember that thing I talked about, the flow chart, and that's why I say flow state here, that dream I had where it was like there's the little guy floating through the pipe, and then all of a sudden he teleports to another. Yeah, we need to have a phase. It's like Portal. Well, basically video games I think are the only thing that can communicate what we're trying to do. In video games, there's some serious screaming with the kids outside.
No, I don't hear it.
But yeah, like it's like Link and Link to the Past, and he's like he's going to the or in Chrono Trigger when you're going through the little mode 7, you need to be able to phase from one time frame to another. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Another one reality to another. Multi-dimensional. You need to have multi-dimensional phase ability.
Can we just use magic?
Yes, well, apparently I am a shaman because I just imagined amen. I did it again, dude. I said it and I smelled it.
Well,
so
that's the start.
I'm a sorcerer.
That's the start.
All right.
All right, brother.
Godspeed until countdown start. Says hello, sir. What's up? We're just heading out. Join us next week. We'll be live streaming starting at 9 a.m. Should we start this thing later? Like nobody shows up. It seems to like to. But you got something going on afterwards, though, don't you?
No, I don't. No.
Maybe let's start. Nah, I'm just gonna keep it. We're sticking at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time, U.S. So tune in if you can. Love to have you. Until next time, keep it creative, cross-cultural, constructive, and from the bottom of my heart, I salute you.
From the bottom of my heart, I salute you.